Hello and welcome to Transfermarkt TV. My name is Stefan Bienkowski, he's Manuel Veth, and today we're talking about a very impressive young talent at Borussia Dortmund called Youssoufa Moukoko. So the kind of big story revolving around this kind of Bundesliga talent is that he's jumped into this first team, he's done very well in Edin Terzic's side. In fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, he's a top goal scorer in the league, if not second top goal scorer. However, his contract comes to an end at the end of the season, and that has led to all sorts of speculation in the January transfer window. So, Manu, why don't you just break down for us, what's the latest and what's happening at Borussia Dortmund right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complicated situation, right? Borussia Dortmund at first were quite convinced that they could get this done very easily. The latest that I heard when I was over there in the fall was like, oh, as soon as he's 18, and this was in November, just before the World Cup. In fact, it was the day before the World Cup kicked off. He turned 18, and as soon as he's 18, we're going to sign him to this new deal. It's going to run for 5 years. It's a shoe-in. No problem at all. And as it's often the case at Borussia Dortmund, Stefan, it wasn't a shoe-in at all. It's far more complicated than people would like it to be. It's now early January, right? Which is problematic for Borussia Dortmund because the moment the clock hits midnight on December 31st or January 1st, he's allowed to talk to other clubs because his contract expires in 6 months' time. And that's, Dortmund have now made two offers, reported offers. You have to sometimes dissect reports from what's actually going on. In fact, the Youssoufa Moukoko camp has previously shut down reports that, saying that not everything that was written in the press is true. I think Moukoko himself went to social media to basically underline this. But the latest has been a 5.5 million a year salary, right? A 10 million euro sign-on bonus, and an increased agent fee. This is a 4 or 5 year deal. I think the issue that Dortmund are facing here now is that because he was in the World Cup squad, right? He is considered a very highly talented player. He broke several records in Germany in the youth ranks at a very young age. Was the youngest player to play in German football in the Bundesliga. In fact, they changed the laws for him so that they could field younger players age 16. Previously, it was 17. So, in fact, they actually changed the laws for him because that's how highly they consider him. But the problem, of course, now is that there's a lot of other teams snooping around, including Premier League teams, right, Stefan?
Yeah, this is the kind of double-edged sword that Dortmund always seem to get cut by. In a sense, they're very good at developing young players. They're very good at scouting and finding young players. Moukoko himself's actually a young player who came from St. Pauli in Hamburg, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not really a well, I guess he is technically a homegrown talent for Dortmund, but he's not a local kid, shall I put it. So he does kind of, in a sense, fit into a bracket that you can maybe put alongside Christian Pulisic, Jude Bellingham, Erling Haaland, etc., etc. He just joined the club a little earlier on in his career. And it's really interesting. As you said, he's had this really impressive breakout season. And with that has come a lot of attention. The clubs that have been linked with him so far in this window are Barcelona, Chelsea, and Newcastle United. And I think Newcastle are the team who've kind of garnered the most interest. Of course, Chelsea just signed a forward this week in João Felix. Barcelona seem to be all over the place. They've been linked with former Barcelona player Aubameyang, former Dortmund player as well. So they might be looking elsewhere. But Newcastle are the team who reportedly have shown the most interest. I think there's a report in the Evening Standard in London that they had offered a 30 million euro sign-on fee and a salary of about 10 million euros. So about twice what Dortmund have been able to, reportedly offer Moukoko. So really interesting to see if he decides to, consider all his options, whether he thinks he's ready to already make that move to the Premier League, whether he simply just wants to make a bit more money. And I think it's also worth maybe pointing out here that before he made that breakthrough into the first team, there was a lot of murmurs from his camp when he was in the youth side about when was he going to get his chance to play, when was he going to get his first team shot. There was a lot of kind of his father or his agent, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're the same person, quite vocal in the German press in recent years saying, he's not getting that kind of he's not been afforded that pathway to the first team that they were promised when he first made the move to the club. He now has made that step up. He has now impressed. And we're now, the kind of shoes on the other foot now, where he can turn around and say, well, if you really want me to stay, make me an offer, but potentially I could turn around and say, this is Moukoko speaking, and I guess in this hypothetical situation that, I waited and waited and waited. You didn't give me much game time. I finally showed what I can do. No thanks, I'm going to move on to another club. But I guess there's still a lot to go on with this, Manu. There's still so much left to kind of play out in terms of whether anything will even be concluded in the January window. But what's your feeling on how this one might come to a conclusion?
Well, I think Dortmund are now in the luxurious position that Sebastian Haller is back, right? His recovery far a lot faster than many anticipated. He's now kicked a ball in a friendly against Fortuna Düsseldorf by the time of recording yesterday. And so they're now in a situation where they have a established number 9, exactly the striker that they wanted in their squad. So I think Borussia Dortmund can go or be a little bit relaxed about it. At the same time, the optics would be very bad for them if Moukoko does indeed leave, because it would be another talent gone, right? And in this case, for free, they wouldn't get any money for him. So it's I think it's a really difficult one for them. And I think that they would probably go and stretch themselves and make this possible. You have to also remember that Moukoko is a German national team player now, right? He did go to the World Cup, although he didn't feature there. He has played previously in the friendly. So I think with all this in mind, you have to really consider Dortmund's situation here as, okay, well, technically speaking, our squad is strong enough without him, but the optics would be terrible if we lose him. So I think they're going to stretch themselves. And I think the Moukoko camp knows this. I also think that when you look at where he is in his development, right? He's 18. He's now playing his real first season in the Bundesliga. There is no doubt that he is a player who is going to be a standout number 9, not just in at Dortmund or wherever else he's going to go, but also for the German national team, which increases his market value significantly. But where is he at right now with his development? It means he needs to go to a club where he's going to play. And I'm not certain that going to Chelsea, that has a terrible track record with German players in recent years, or going to a club like Newcastle, where there's a revolving door of players, is going to really help his development. That's where I am right now. And I think when you read through the German press, a lot of people seem to agree with that assessment.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few things that kind of play into Dortmund's hand here or suggest that he's likely to stay at Dortmund. I think number one is that reportedly Dortmund have kind of set a deadline for this to be concluded by the end of the month, which makes me think that they're maybe quite optimistic that they can come to a conclusion. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think he's actually maybe pushing for a move. I think he's probably just pushing for recognition. There's quite a lot of reports in Germany saying he's not asking to be the most highly paid player at Dortmund. He's just asking to be paid as much as some of their other first team regular players. I think Adeyemi was the player who keeps getting used as an example, who's a couple of years older, who moved there from RB Salzburg. Now, he's obviously established himself in Austrian football before he made the move to Dortmund, already a German international, already a player who a lot of German football fans knew all about. So he's a little further ahead than Moukoko. But I think what Moukoko and his camp are saying here is that, well, I've been carrying this team to a large extent. I've been scoring the goals. I deserve to be paid just as much as these other young forwards at the club. And I think that's probably where we're likely to find a compromise, between now and the end of the month. And unfortunately, if you're a Newcastle or Chelsea or Barcelona fan, that probably means Moukoko's staying put at Dortmund, even if, or rather perhaps, the only kind of hope they may have is that him and his agent kind of demand some sort of release clause. But I think that's probably sums up, Manu, unless you have anything else to add to that.
No, that's perfect. I think that's everything that needs to be said about this right now.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, as always, if you like what you've seen here, guys, give us a like, give us a subscribe, leave us a comment and let us know what you think and where you think Moukoko is going to end up, not only just this month, perhaps in the coming seasons. And until next time, we'll see you later. Thanks.